and those who are, his friends, those who were in his company before he gets detained. So, in Eritrea, detention started back after independence in 1991. And the first incident that we have recorded after independence or after liberation of Eritrea was less than 2 months after the independence of Eritrea. So that is July 1991. Some people go far beyond that date before the independence. However, just to make it clear, it's better to differentiate between things that happened before independence and things that happened after the independence of Eritrea. So we chose the 14th of April to be the day of detainees. Just as a symbolic choice, no more than that. Because 1992, April 14th, 1992 was the first mass arrest that we had in Eritrea. And to mark the detainees and to just make people aware and raise awareness, and also to gather people around this issue. It's a very critical issue. A lot of families have been suffering on their own, a lot of Eritrean families. And to show support and to tell them that we haven't neglected them. We're standing by their side, we're standing with them. We chose the 14th of April to be the Eritrean Detainees Day, a symbolic day, as I said. However, it doesn't have to stop there. We need to talk about this issue on the 14th of April, anytime, anywhere, whenever it's possible. We need to talk about it because it's something that the people who have been detained, they don't recognize the 14th of April as a detention day. Every day for them is a detention day. Every day for them is a suffering day. So we need to. We don't need to stop on the 14th. We don't need to remember them on the 14th of April. Just, but for us, in order for people to kind of gather around it, we chose that day. As a lot of us might be aware that the Commission of Inquiry in Eritrea, they reported that there are over 10,000 detainees in Eritrea. When you talk about 10,000, you're also talking about the people who left behind. 10,000, this is the minimum number. It could be 15, it could be 20. No one has an accurate figure for the number of detainees in Eritrea, but this is the number that is recorded as a minimum. And when you say a minimum of 10,000 Eritreans, that means it could have been me, it could have been anyone who is present in this room today. And we need to acknowledge that as well. So when you're talking about 10,000, remember also to talk about those who are left behind, their families, their relatives. I'm going to speak also about my role in this campaign. It's an open campaign, it's a public campaign. Everyone can coordinate with us to hold events, to talk about detainees in Eritrea, anywhere and everywhere. And it's very heartwarming to see people huddling around this campaign and organizing events in more than one country. In fact, in Australia, all the way to the east, in Europe, and we hope that to see this campaign spreading all over the world. It's hard to do this in some places because of the political situation. However, there are a lot of people who are in contact with us, who are part of it, who are supporting it. However, they might not be able to organize events like this. So that is something also to be acknowledged and recorded. The objective of the campaign is this 10,000 is just a figure. If we don't put names, age, if you don't put the human beings on it. 10,000 is a figure. However, we need to document this. We need to talk about who is behind the bars. Today, they are detained. But who knows, this is the history that we're going to leave for our children and grandchildren. We're going to say we had 10,000, and these are the names, these are the numbers. 10,000 people, over 10,000 people had been detained at some point in Eritrea's history so that you can live in freedom. So just saying 10,000 isn't enough, and documentation is one of the main objectives that we're trying to do with this campaign. If you know anyone, if you are related to anyone within who is detained in Eritrea, please get in touch with us, and also give us as many information as you can so that we put in the database that we're trying to create. One of the achievements that we're trying to get out of this campaign is to get people on board, get people acknowledge the fact that there are people who've been detained. And one of the things that we need to get to as well, breaking the silence. We've been silent for the past 2 decades almost. No one has talked about this issue, and if we do it in our own homes. We don't take it to the public. And it's something that we need to talk about everywhere, as I said. So, breaking the silence is one of the objectives. Another thing is showing solidarity and support to the families. When you have a father who leaves behind a 3-year-old baby and a mother who never been to work, who cannot work because of the reality of the situation in Eritrea, not a lot of women work, how is she expected to raise that girl? How is she expected to raise that child? For some of them, they are now mothers, those babies that we're talking about, mothers and fathers. They were never able to have that fatherhood in their life. And now they themselves are fathers and mothers, as I said. So they might have lost hope, but we need to restore that faith and that hope in them. We need to show support, we need to stand with them, and we also need to spread hope in their hearts and around them. I'm just going to briefly also talk in Arabic if that is necessary. I think it's, everyone understood what I said, so I'm just going to finish it there. And thank you very much for coming, and also thank you very much for showing your support and your solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important message from the coordinating committee. The documentation is very important. The regime always counts on us not knowing the whereabouts and the identities of our victims. So it's very important when we have the documentation with the names, age, and so on. Age is very important as well, because there are underage people who are under the age of 16, 18 are detained for no good reason. No reason, in fact, at all. So it's very important that these are all documented and reported on, inshallah. So the cooperation of all Eritreans is important in this regard. So thank you very much, Brother Musa Ismail.
Ismail Musa.
Ismail Musa. Okay. Ismail Musa. Inshallah. The next speaker is on human rights situation in Eritrea, and that is Sister Helen Kinane. Are you here? Yes? Come forward. Have you had some water to drink? Yeah. Okay, so come forward then. Thank you. Helen Kinane, of course, is a human rights activist, and she lives in Bristol. Have you come all the way from Bristol today? So Birmingham, you're not the only one coming from far away. Bristol is far away. Inshallah. Okay.
Thank you very much for inviting me to give a talk today, and thank you for everybody here. قرب بإنجليش بترينا من الحواسكون كزاربكم نتي coordinating committee زبالو أسرت الشح وصرات على اللواء بإريترا أسرت الشح كتن بالخلنا أسرت الشح سدرابت تفنكيلوم يوم أتي كمتي زبالو أتي سدرا بتراعي هنا أنا زي مأسا أفنج تتقبلو أي بلنا له جينا مأساني كنسلا له so نحن لو معتي كنذكر هولنا أسرات نايت تأثروا تراجع هنا كب نالوني كمان تتأثروا نايت صباح كم تتأثروا كم يجينا ناينا تتقبلنا بلا إذا نجارا بربزة تأثر كلا كخلا لوجو أتي ناي documenting لا one of the issues called بجيب English كزارة ناي شيلا كتر special rapporteur ناي إريترا زلا her mandate due to the report coming out last year has been reduced, which in turn means that a lot of the work in terms of the documentation, reporting and monitoring of human rights situation is going to fall on Eritrean human rights activists across the world. We need to be trained up to know what we're doing, to be able to continue monitoring this, because the Commission of Inquiry is not moving forward going to be able to do that job. So it is imperative that all Eritrean organizations, human rights activists, continue to work together to collaborate on this, because we need to continue monitoring the situation. We need to be able to also provide the support for the families in Eritrea. And clearly, if we don't know who's being imprisoned, we can't provide that support. So monitoring the situation is important. Reporting it is important, because without reporting it, we can't get to justice as well. So we need to report it to the proper bodies such as the UN. So, while we are remembering today that the 10,000 Eritreans, and it is important to remember, but I also would like to see, from my point, a more action-orientated Eritrean opposition and human rights activism. We need to put our money where our mouth is, and really get down to the job of doing it, because we need to stop it. We can't, while commemorating it is good, we don't want to live in commemorating only the imprisoned and the suffering. We need to be able to put an end to all of these crimes, and we need to hold all of those that are accountable for it behind bars, because people that commit crimes should be in prison, not those that haven't committed crimes. And if we are to change the history of Eritrea, we need to teach our young people that there should be justice. And if we can't bring those to justice, then not only have we failed those in prison, we have failed the future generations of Eritrea. So I say to all of you that if we want to change the situation, we need to change ourselves. We need to be able to work together. We need to be able to stop what's going on. And we need to be able to say enough is enough, because I don't think Eritreans have made our voice as strongly heard as we could have. Yes, Geneva was a success last year, but that's not the end. That is only the beginning of the road. The Eritrean government in Africa is trying to make inroads, saying, all the pressure from outside is because of neo-colonialism. We have to be able, on the African continent, to say to all those African leaders and the African people, no, Eritrea is in Africa, you need to stand with the Eritrean people. We need to get that message across. So what I would say to you is, we need more activism in the African continent. The African Commission exists. There is human rights space. I know a lot of in fact the African Union is decreasing the space for civil society. But we need to keep pushing. And integrated Eritrean opposition and human rights activism is the only way forward. Because we done stuff in the African Union in Addis Ababa in January. Now there is the Niger coming up end of this month. There is work being done, but it is not as much as it could be. And stuff like this, the detainees, we need to hold side events at the African Commission, at the African Union, at the EU level, and say, these are people that are being imprisoned. But we also need to bring their stories to the fore, because when we say 10,000 Eritreans are in prison, 10,000, 6 million Jews died during the Second World War, 1 million Gypsies died, but that's very impersonal. That does not touch at the core of human suffering. So what we need to be able to do is bring those stories, because when you bring a person's story, that touches the hearts of people, that changes people. When we talk in figures, we dehumanize even those that are in jail. So what I would say is, let's bring those stories out of their families, let's bring the stories out of their detainees, and let's spread their stories around the different places that we can do. So my point is, it's a good start. We're doing this. This should be remembered. All of us need to remember those who are in prison. But let's take this forward and let's really bring the message to the international community. We know our suffering, but the rest of the world doesn't know our suffering. The EU is saying, yeah, okay, the Eritrean situation is bad, but it's not really that bad. We can trade with the Eritrean government. So we need to say to them, look, no, it is that bad. This is the suffering of Eritreans. This is what they're going through. And unless we bring our stories to the front, nobody's going to do that for us. So my message is thank you very much for giving me the chance to talk. And I hope to see more of these things, and also more of these things on an international level. Because this is a good for Eritreans, but let's take it one step further.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Helen Kidane, for that important message of working together, working at the international stage, especially around African Union, EU, and other international platforms, because there are always confusions, sometimes misconceptions, especially within the African continent. Anything that comes from ICC or Europe, they think it's just prejudicing them, but it needs to be told that there's a criminal within Africa who needs to be held accountable to the crimes that is going on in Eritrea for the last 25 years, which is now is considered as crimes against humanity. So it's not even an ordinary crime anymore. It's like the highest proportion of crime that's a crime against humanity. And I'm sure some of those lawyers of international law can explain to us later maybe what this means. Now the next speaker is a youth activist from London, an Eritrean youth activist, Amal Bider. If you can come forward and say a few words, thank you.
I'm just getting out of my notes, sorry. I'm disorganized like that. Okay. First of all, say Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Amal Bider. I'm an activist in the UK. I document stories from Eritreans. I've been to Germany. I've interviewed asylum seekers over there. I've been to Calais. I've interviewed asylum seekers over there, Syrian refugees. I've also interviewed my relatives from Eritrea who are also refugees. So today I was asked to come down and answer the two questions, which is how human rights abuses in Eritrea affects your generation, so my generation, and what young Eritrean diaspora can do to stop repression and human rights violations in Eritrea. So what I thought is I'd collate personal accounts of refugees I've interviewed and just pick the parts which are relevant to Eritrean detainees and share key personal accounts with you guys today. So on the 14th of April, it is a day where we remember those who were victims of the mass incarceration which took place in 1992. Now, those who were detained were prisoners of conscience. So these are your normal everyday people who do not want to comply with the military regime. And this therefore shows that there is an abuse of human rights and that Eritreans are denied the freedoms to live life outside of the military. And this has been happening since this was the early EPLS response to say, and it's to silence those who speak out. Now, here's what they had to say. So one of the asylum seekers I interviewed said, in Eritrea, there are 361 prisons. The service in Eritrea is indefinite and the people cannot leave. In Eritrea, we have prisons called Kersheli. If I pronounce this wrong, by the way, please tell me. A prison called Kersheli, and this is where people go before they are in prison, sort of like a police station. So they carry out search campaigns to those who didn't go to military service, and if they see a young person lurking around, they will imprison them. So when you finish year 11 and you're the age of 15 to 16, you have to study in Sawa, if I pronounce that correctly as well. And I was told that there are various different types of prisons. Some are hardcore prisons and some are light prisons. So the hard prisons are ones designed for immigrants and for smugglers and for people who have forged papers, which basically comes from the government and says, oh, you are free to go out, you don't have to be parliamentary regime. So those papers are faked, and if you're caught faked, you will be imprisoned. So people have been forced to lie down and they put their feet up and their feet get whacked, which is a form of torture. Another prison which was spoken about was Ade Abeto, I don't know if I said that right, Ade Abeto, yeah? And this is a large prison, and one of the personal accounts is that, let's say you have a hall, and the hall has 400 people within it. You are allowed to go out only twice a day, so in the morning and at night time. So imagine if during the day you want to go to the toilet, you want to go stretch your legs, you cannot. So the conditions are really harsh, because imagine there are people who are coming from villages who are taken into prisons near Asmara, and obviously they're not really used to travelling conditions. So some of them feel sick. So some throw up during the daytime, some legit just poo during the daytime, and some have food poisoning. And imagine you are not allowed to wear shoes within the prisons, so you're probably stepping on this. And if you want to go for a walk outside, imagine the temperatures are really, really, really hot, so you're also stepping on scorching cold floor. Another thing was that was really talked about was being whipped when you wake up in the morning to go for a walk. If you're tired, you have to go out in the morning, so you're whipped to leave. There are other prison calls. I think, as I said, this might be incorrect, but I don't know the exact pronunciation. But it's for light crimes, and the prisons are made of metals, so mercury and zinc, and some are underground in bunkers in prisons. The people in Asmara are in prison underground. And if you run away, they will imprison your family. And even if you are old, they will still imprison you. And if you come back, they will then release your family. The food is not that great, so health is not really a priority in those prisons. And if you are caught trying to run away from Eritrea and Sudan, from Eritrea and trying to go to Sudan and Libya, you get interrogated and interviewed, and they will try to find out who tried to smuggle you, and they will obviously charge your family ransom. So some people have been beaten up when being interrogated, and some have left interviews being paralysed. So even if you were innocent of a crime and you're being tortured, of course you're going to confess to anything just to make them stop hitting you. So some people are in prison for no reason whatsoever. Now, to answer the question, how human rights abuses in Eritrea affect my generation, I respond to the question, how can it not affect people of my generation? The indefinite military service offers people no work or life prospects. So this affects my generation because we are tired of seeing Eritrean refugees dying in the Mediterranean Sea. We are tired of seeing seeing our brothers and sisters in Eritrea in refugee camps. We are tired of Europe not showing our brothers and sisters enough love and making them out to be benefits grounders instead of treating them like victims of abuse and torture. I'm so passionate about this Eritrean cause because the way I see it is, had it not been for my parents fleeing Eritrea, I would be in the same situation today. And I feel like if it could have been me, it could have been you. And I think this is a mindset we need to adopt in order for us to empathise with people of Eritrea. So the question is, the second question was, what young Eritrean diaspora can do to stop oppression and human rights and violations in Eritrea? So first of all, we have to look at the causes. One of the causes is the media aspect to it, which is the underreporting and the ignoring of the situation and then pretending that it does not exist. So in Eritrea, there is a current independent media, but there is no current independent media, and there's only one media outlet which comes from the government, which is from the Ministry of Information. So there is no private broadcasting allowed, and so journalists and newspapers are not also allowed to shed light on what's happening. So I think it is our job, if it can't come from the inside, it has to come from the outside. We have to challenge the lying media and biased media, and we have to provide the alternative, one that is set up to challenge the dominant narrative given by the oppressive regime, and we have to be unapologetic about it and just do it. Another thing was, we need to be more active and become activists. We need to have a dedicated team who believe in our vision, which is to eradicate the detention of people in Eritrea, not once a year, but consistently throughout the year, every single day. We need to also document the narratives, like you said, because figures literally is just a way of dehumanizing the people. Especially with regards to documenting, we need to utilize people's arts and creativity. If that means making documentaries, spoken words, little movies, so be it. And I was thinking maybe we can have stories of those imprisoned, and such as the old man, Captain Sheikh Ahmed Faras. He was in prison and died, and he was, 80? So does not discriminate against age, no matter how old, how young, he will still be imprisoned. Another thing was, maybe we can have a documentary on the G15. Who are they? Also, when I look at these posters, I don't see enough females on there. What happened to the female people who are imprisoned? That's another thing to think about. What about the ethnic minority and religious groups, the Jehovah's Witnesses as well, and Muslim people? We don't get those stories either. So I think a way to be effective is to network with other human rights organisations, not only in the UK but across Europe. We need to have this universal database where we all collate information about those who have been in prison and create like one document of data, and we can share it out. And in a way, another one was we wanted to show solidarity with the families. Instead of just having a platform inviting families to come down, we need to also be able to get the narrative across, but have sponsors, but sponsor the families, because as you can imagine, there will be parents who've been in prison and their kids don't have people to, fund their education, their health and their clothes and whatnot. We need to be able to set up sponsoring mechanisms. So I think I'm going to leave it on that note, and I just want to say 2017 I think should be the year where we free all prisoners, and I want everyone to be with us so that we can be with them. Thank you guys so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Amal, for that inspiring talk.
الجمهور بس مش اللي هنا في جمهور قاعد يتابعوا العرب والتقنيين لو تدخلون يكون كويس الناس اللي يقدروا يعني يا الله الجمهور بس مش هنا
وصلت رسالتك مرة واحدة قولها المتفق حولها اصلا يعني
لا الناس لسه
لكن عدم التكرار دائما مهم جدا
ولا يهمك بالتأكيد
طيب الموبايلات لو تطفوها بالمناسبة أو كمان خلوها سايلنت يعني. كنت عايز أقول كلام فيما قالته الأخت أمال لكن الآن الموجة تغيرت شوية. طيب I think Amal mentioned very important points, telling the stories of the prisoners, including the minorities and the sisters and all other segments of our society. This is, I think, very important because we're talking about human rights, not just about specific religious or ethnic or regional groups, but human rights. So that's universal, it should include everyone. And the documentation and media reporting should also be addressed, which is very important. So there are lists of recommendations that we should really all take into consideration as part of our activities. That's been mentioned by all our speakers, and including our last speaker, Amal Bidel. Thank you so much. Do we have Daniel Waldetinsay with us? Yeah. You're here. Huh? He's coming?
Yeah, downstairs.
Downstairs. Okay. But just to introduce Daniel, is the brother of Haila Waldetinsay. Haila Waldetinsay is one of the G15. He's also a veteran fighter with the EPLF. He was a Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he was detained in 2001 simply for calling for a meeting and some kind of accountability. That was the only crime that him and his colleagues committed. Just calling for a meeting to account for any wrongdoing or mistakes. And since 2001, him and his colleagues are in detention. No one knows their whereabouts and their health conditions. So if Daniel, what did it say? Abu Rashid Jaz, okay. We'll make a slight change to the program. So instead of Daniel's, while waiting for him to come, I'll call on Abu Rashid, Muhammad Juma Abu Rashid, to say a few words in Arabic. هذه المرة حتكون إن شاء الله باللغة العربية. وشيخنا الشيخ أبو رشيد وهو ناشط حقوقي يأتي دائما من بعيد ليساهم في مثل هذه المناسبات، فجزاه الله خيرا عنا وعن كل المستضعفين في الأرض. تفضل.
السلام عليكم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. حملة يوم المعتقل الإريتري أذكر يوم بدأناها قبل 6 سنوات، ونحن نقول إن شاء الله هذا آخر عام يعني، وما يكون في بعدها يعني يوم للمعتقلين. لكن يبدو محنة وكربة آبائنا وإخواننا ومشايخنا وأساتذتنا ومناضلينا وأطفالنا ونسائنا كربتهم طالت، ولكن الإنسان لا ييأس من فرج الله. يعني إحنا دائما نعيش الأمل، والأمل قائم. الحملة تدخل عامها السادس، وكلنا أمل بأن ينتهي هذا العناء. وهؤلاء الناس فيهم، أنا أذكر هذا الرجل الثاني أخذ يعني وهو عريس في اليوم السابع، تاريخ اعتقاله سنة 92. زوجته ما زالت تنتظره إلى الآن، لا تزوجت ولا تطلقت، ما زالت تنتظر 24 سنة تقريبا أو 25 سنة، وهي ما زالت تنتظره. هي عروس 7 أيام فقط مع زوجها. في هؤلاء الناس من ماتت الأستاذ إبراهيم جمع، ماتوا 2 بناته بالصدمة، ابنه معتقل معه. في هؤلاء الناس من كان وزير، من كان مسؤول، من كان مزارع، معلم، شيخ يوجه الناس. نحن الوطن يعيش كارثة بمعنى الكارثة. أنا لا أعلم في حياتي أبدا كما يحدث عندنا في إريتريا. قد يقول الإنسان ما لا المعتقلات موجودة في العالم كله، إخفاء قسري وخطف الناس موجود عبر العالم، هذه حقيقة، لكن أنا لا أقصد هذا. أنا أقصد لا أعلم في حياتي نظام أخفى أكثر من 10,000 شخص لمدة 25 سنة. لا أعرف هذا في تاريخ البشرية. أعرف أنظمة في المنطقة العربية، في المنطقة الإفريقية، في آسيا، أخذت ناس أخفتهم قسرا. أكبر عدد أعلمه حاليا، يمكن ربما أستاذة ما تعرف وغيرها، أعرف مثلا زي 3,000 4,000 شخص مخفيين قسرا. لكن لا أعلم في تاريخ البشرية كلها نظام يخفي 25 سنة أكثر من 10,000 شخص. أنا لا أعرف هذا في دنيا الناس. تميز هذا النظام بكل القبائل، بكل المصائب. بلد يا إخوة إلى الآن المواطن لا يعرف فيه ما هي عقوبته إذا أجرم، ما هي عقوبته إذا عارض النظام. الشرطة لا تعرف قانون الضبط وإلقاء القبض والجريمة. القاضي لا يعرف القانون الذي يحاكم به الناس. يأتي عنده شخص لا يعرف القاضي بماذا يصدر عليه الحكم. نحن لا نعيش في دولة يا إخوة، نحن نعيش في أمر حتى يمكن الغابات عندها أسود تدير أحوالها، لكن نحن حتى وضع الغابات نحن أصبحنا أسوأ منه في دنيا الناس. إريتريا اليوم من أكثر بلدان العالم انتهاكا لحقوق الإنسان، من أكثر بلاد العالم تهدر فيه الكرامة، من أكثر بلاد العالم تنتهك فيه الإنسانية بمعنى الإنسانية. ومن أسوأ ما يمكن أن يواجهه الإنسان المعتقل أن لا يسمح له بزيارة أهله، أن لا يخرج إلى الخارج، أن لا يتواصل مع الخارج، أن لا يعرف مدة حكمه والحكم الذي يصدر فيه. كل هذه القضايا هي انتهاك لكرامة الإنسان، ومسائل نص عليها القانون الدولي بأن هذه عقوبات جريمتها جرائم إنسانية ينبغي أن يساق بها الإنسان. إذن الوضع القائم عندنا في إريتريا جريمة إنسانية متحققة كاملة الأركان 100%. ينبغي الشعب الإريترياني أن يتحرك وأن يقود هؤلاء الناس إلى المحاكمة. علينا أن نسعى إلى أن نقود هؤلاء الناس إلى المحاكمة، لا خيار لنا آخر. نحن موضوع يحكمون ما يحكمون أمر آخر، لكن الآن نحن أمام جرائم إنسانية فاضحة كاشفة صريحة واضحة الدلالة واضحة الأركان بينة مكتملة، وبالتالي علينا أن لا نتهاون في هذا الملف. أتمنى حملة يوم المعتقل الإريتري بشبابها، وأحيي أخونا باشمهندس إسماعيل المنسق العام للحملة، أحيي إخواننا عبر العالم في التنسيقية التي تدير هذه الحملة، شباب مستنير. أشكر أخونا فؤاد عامر وإخوانه وأختنا أسمهان اللي سهروا وتعبوا هنا في لندن حتى ينظموا لنا هذا اللقاء. أشكر كل الأخوة والأخوات اللي شاركوا. إخواني أمامكم هذه هي إريتريا معتقلة برمتها، إريتريا كلها في السجن. الآن انظروا الصور من هنا إلى هنا، ستجدون الشعب الإريتري كله في السجن. هذه هي الحقيقة يا إخوة. وأنا طبعا لا أريد أن أطيل عليكم أكثر من هذا، لكن هذا الرجل محمد مرانت، هذا الرجل قاضي ومعلم ومناضل. حياته كانت يدخل السجن العدو الإثيوبي ويطلع، يدخل السجن ويطلع. هذا الرجل هو كان أول معتقل في إريتريا سنة 91 بعد الاستقلال. أخذ من بيته بعد 50 يوم فقط من الاستقلال. أولاده لم يروه، لم يسمعوا عنه شيء، لا ندري ماذا حدث فيه، حي أم ميت. نحن فكرنا هذه الحملة يوم المعتقل الإريتري أن نؤرخ لها من تاريخ هذا الرجل 17/7/91، لكن في الأخير قلنا هو فرد واحد، علينا أن نؤرخ بحدث أكبر منه، فأرخنا من تاريخ 92 لأن الحدث كان أكبر في عموم إريتريا. هذا هو السبب اليوم اللي اخترنا به. هذه هي حملة لكل الأريتريين من غير أن نفرق بين دينهم وألوانهم وقبائلهم وأينما كانوا. نحن عندنا معتقلين قيدوا من خارج إريتريا ودخل بهم إلى داخل إريتريا، معتقلين لن ننسى مثل حراميتاي وغيره الذين أخذوا، حامد برسودان الذين أخذوا من السودان مقيدين ودخل بهم إلى داخل إريتريا. لا ننسى أبنائنا الذين يعيشون الآن هاربين من النظام ووقعوا في معتقلات الدول العربية المختلفة. لا ننسى إخواننا الذين الآن أبنائنا الصغار الذين يطلق عليهم الرصاص في الحدود ثم يذهب بهم إلى سجن حشفيراي وغيرهم يعيشون في مأساة إنسانية. في هذا الشهر الذي نحن فيه العام الماضي مات طفل في سجن عد أبايتو، ثم مات هذا العام نفسه أيضا شاب آخر بالتعذيب في نفس المعتقل. إذن هذا المعتقل الذي يمكن يخجل أمامه سجن الباستيل وسجون العالم، أصبح هذا السجن عار على الإريتريين جميعا، وعلينا أن نفضح مثل هذه السجون وأن نقف في وجه السجانين وأن نكشف يعني بقدر ما نستطيع هذه المعتقلات. أشكر أخي الأستاذ عبد الرحمن سيد منحني هذه الفرصة، وشكرا لكم جميعا.
شكرا للأستاذ أبو رشيد، وأنت أهلا لهذا المكان وهذا الموقع. الفقرة التالية حتكون حول نقاش، يعني حيكون عندنا ضيوف في المنصة ويتكلموا إن شاء الله كل واحد فيهم على حدة، ومن ثم يكون النقاش مفتوح. لكن قبلها يبدو في برنامج للشباب. كم سيستغرق؟ 15 دقائق؟ 5 دقائق؟ 3 minutes. اوكي 2 minutes. اوكي، فحيكون عندنا ممكن نوع من المسرحية. اوكي طيب، تفضلوا تضامنا مع المعتقلين. اوكي، تمثل البروجرام. اوكي، solidarity with detainees. نخلط اللي كلاتنا عيناها نشوفني تساوي زور حجي. حدثت a program which is good to express. So it's just to show solidarity with the detainees. For 1 to 2 minutes we can just cover our eyes with those pieces that we have been given now. Inshallah, that's just an expression of solidarity that is, it is.
الآن تقريبا في مسرحية والناس يمكن معصومي الأعين بهذه القطعة تضامنا مع يوم المعتقل الإريتري.
Just when you're doing that, imagine you are in a prison cell on your own.
تضامن رمزي مع يوم المعتقل الإريتري. هؤلاء معصومي الأعين إن شاء الله.
Just keep silent for more 2 or 3 moments, please. Minutes. Imagine your family isn't with you, no one is around. And also imagine that's been a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5, 10. You left behind children. You also left behind your family. Imagine probably your father or your mother had passed away when you're in that situation. Imagine not knowing if you're coming out or not. I just want you to go deep in that little world that you're in right now. Imagine not having someone like me talking to you. The person who's talking to you is a prison guard. All he does is shouts at you. Imagine the next meal is going to be in 12 hours. And also imagine that your prison mate had passed away a few years ago just because of the torture that they were going through. That is the kind of feeling that people are enduring in Eritrea. That is the kind of situation that a lot of people are going through in Eritrea. Just think deep. And if this doesn't make you stay in solidarity with the brothers and sisters who have been detained, then what else? I'm just going to ask you to remove your phones, and I'll thank you very much for that.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure some of you must have felt, or all of you must have felt the feeling of someone in detention in the situation that we were in the last few minutes. Can I now call on Daniel Wadatinsaye? Daniel Wadatinsaye, to just say a few words, and then we'll move straight to the panel discussion, inshallah. Daniel, as I said earlier, is the young brother of Minister Haile Wadatinsaye, who is in detention since 2001 with no recourse to justice, and some leaked reports from Eritrea indicate that he's in a very bad state of health, which I wouldn't want to go into the details, but I can say that it's a very bad health situation that he's in. So Daniel.
መጀመሪያ ምስተገብረለይ ተመስገን ደሊ ካብ ቆጽለ ኸኣኒ ብዙሕ እቲ ስቃይናን ሽግርናን ምሳኹም ስለ ዝሓድር ምሳኹም ስለ ዝውዕል ምሳኹም ስለ ዝነብር ኣብ ዝርዝሩ ተኸድኩ ኣይድለንን ኮይኑ ይስማዓኒ ኣብ ኣካለይ እውን ትሪእዎ ስለ ዘለኹም ሓደ ቤተሰብ ስለ ዝኾና ኣፍንጫ ክትጉዳእ ከላ ዓይነት ነበር እንዲ ንስኻትኩም ከኣሕዋተይ ክርስቲያን እስላም ካብ ኩሉ ኣውረጃታት ስቃይና እቶም ውሽጢ ዘለና ንኹላትኩም ከም ዝስማዓኩም ርዱእ እዩ ሕጂ ኣብኡ ግዜ ክቕፅል ከፅናዕልኩም ኣይደልን እየ እቲ ናብራና ግን ናብራ ከፋሕ ከም ምዃኑ ኣይትስሕትዎን ኢኹም ምናልባት ኣብ ዘለኹም ብዙሕ ዓመታት ስለ ዝኾነ ናይ ደርጊ ትፈልጥዎ ነርኩም ትኾኑ ናይ ሃይለ ስላሴ ኣገባብ ትፈልጥዎ ነርኩም ትኾኑ ኣብዚ ሕጂ ግዜ ግን ከቢድን ፅንኩርን እዩ ንምትንፋስ እውን ግዜ ኣይወሃበና እቲ ንበልዖ ንሰትዮም ከም ትርድእዎ ዝነቐፀ ባኒ እዩ እቲ ንሰትዮ እውን ዕድል ተገርና ከመን ሽንትና ኢና ንሰቲ ሽንትና ሓደ ግዜ ባኑ ከኣኒ እንተ ደኣ ነቒፅና ኣብኡ ንእትዎ እሞኒ መፅፅ እዩ ግን ሂወትካ ንምድሓን ክትብል ትምዕጎም ዝደለየ መፅኢ ክጥዕሞ ክእሊ إذا زقنيشن تخون خير على حاجة كذا سومن سلسة سومن سلسة معت زي شنو لولو زي كنت نابرنا كفحنا برا سمعتكم كنتم في لديكم كوس بتحكي عبوت إنه خاطر مثلي زارب زلمه حجة أنا بزمن إيه كأني وكيلنا يكونم أسرة ديهم كوس أنا كم حالة خبطهم أبستفر عليه ناي مأسرة وثاثات نخ خيد عدد زكاة أمني حما عدد يقفاز بحر قل عدد زكاة أمني سبي أبزح ناي بيت مأسرة وثاثاتون كزي يحلفينه حجة تاخد قبري من تانتي أبستفر عليه وثاثات زحاون باللبوع من تان كير سعو إتها تحف تخم ببركوي بالمجموعة كون مشت ندات منخو مو سلامتان دقربكو بستقبل العلمية مسلم نايلم مداري من أختي كاب بداية بيترا خوينو إذا ما الأختي بستقبل عليه أقد أمثاتن